Hello, good morning, everyone. So now we can start. So yesterday we started about the evolution of Indian power sector, and we briefly discussed that what have been the major problems associated with the Indian power industry, be it from the government side, from the policy making side, and from everywhere, what ails the Indian power sector, and that finally led to the changes, watershed changes from 92 onwards, so that we are witnessing somewhat better situation rather than in the last 50 years. The power sector in India has undergone significant progress after independence. I think all of you agree, at least on this count. Initially, hydropower and coal-based thermal power have been the main sources of generating power. Generation and distribution of electrical power was carried out primarily by private utility companies. As I told you, I will have a very quick refresh over the things that we dealt last day, in the last session. Power was available only in a few urban centers. Few urban centers. I again repeat, rural areas and villages did not have electricity at all. I mean, this initial situation was very detrimental for the country's growth. Still, people are coming in. I have to change the tab, then only I can admit. After 1947, all new power generation, transmission, and distribution in the rural sector and the urban centers came under the purview of state and central government agencies. In the pre-independence era, some utility sectors or most of the utility sectors were owned by private companies. But after we gained independence, these private companies were abolished, and in very few regions they remained, and most of the utility sectors were owned by state electricity boards. So SEBs were formed in all states except for certain areas like nuclear power. Nuclear power development was at a very slow pace. It was introduced in India in somewhere around late 60s. So for that, no state government was entrusted with this responsibility. Instead, Nuclear Power Corporation was formed. A separate entity was created to handle the nuclear power program in India. The concept of operating power systems on a regional basis crossing the political boundaries of states was introduced in early 60s, and this was the advent of establishment of regional grids. In spite of the overall development that has taken place at that time, the power supply industry has been under constant pressure to bridge the gap between supply and demand. And this has always been the situation, even now also. In spite of impressive addition in generation, transmission, and distribution capacity, growth in the demand for power has always exceeded the generation capacity. So I think we will have a very brief discussion regarding the last day's session, but that is essential so that things get fresh in your mind. Now we can have a little talk about transmission of electric power. Electricity or electric power transmission is the bulk transfer of electrical energy. I think all of you are comfortable with this. From generating power plants to electrical substations, which are located near demand centers or the load centers, what we call them. And this is being carried out at high voltage or extra high voltage or even ultra high voltages. Now there is a demarcation. How do we classify these three stages of voltages? But beyond 132 kV, the transmission systems use such kind of voltage systems. I mean, if it is 132 kV and above, it is preferable for the transmission voltages. So transmission lines, when interconnected with each other, they become transmission networks. Transmission networks. For example, we have got very large generating stations, say at Panki or Shaktinagar or Anpara, Obra. And if we connect all these separate transmission lines, then they are known as transmission networks. And interconnection is very much required. Without interconnection, we are not going to realize the benefits of electrical power utility. Generally, these are typically or normally referred to as power grids. Now, these transmission networks are known as power grids or simply the grid. The electricity grid in India is a conglomeration or a combination of power system owned by various utilities, be it private, be it government, or in the joint venture, whatever may be. They are totally connected to the grid. The entire country has been divided into 5 regions for transmission systems, and these are northern, northeastern, eastern, western, and southern region. The interconnected transmission systems with each region is also called the regional grid. So these transmission lines use high voltage 3-phase AC systems in most of the cases. Somewhere for the purpose of railways or railway traction, we use single phase AC systems also. High voltage DC is used for greater efficiency or for greater benefits in long or very long distance transmission lines. So that is going to be a different kind of discussion. I think in the next semester, we will have a very important subject related to PHV, AC and HVDC transmission. So as we all know that electrical energy cannot be stored beyond small limits, and therefore it must be generated as and when required. Good control system is required to ensure electric generation very closely that matches the demand. If the demand for power exceeds the supply, the situation is not good, and no electrical engineer will ever prefer to have such situations. So generation plants and transmission equipments can shut down in such cases, and this can finally lead to a major blackout condition. And if you can remember, it all happened in the year 2011. So we have to have a very robust system which consists of our grids that are connected to the distribution end, and finally we are in the process of establishing our national grid. We discussed about things related to the transmission losses, and we will keep on discussing as and when the things come up before us. In the slide before you, you can say that 1897 was the year when power generation started, and the plant was established in Darjeeling. So, dear participants, you know that development of power sector is the key to economic development. The power sector has been receiving adequate priority ever since the process of planned development began in 1950. You know, our country has been a very strong in the plant development process. In the plant development process means we all relied on good statistical methods in order to plan for our development, growth, economic development, which can consist of very big, huge programs like food for all, housing for all, power for all, employment for all. So when a country of 50 crore, 70 crore people are having or living in abject poverty conditions, so planning provides us a kind of better situation so that we can arrange our resources and we can grow accordingly. So power sector was no exception. It received adequate priority ever since the process of planned development. It has been getting almost 18 to 20% of the total public sector budget in initial plan period. I told you that the situation in the early 50s was very alarming. The total installed capacity, as you can see, was only 1362 megawatt. Now, remarkable growth and progress have led to extensive use of electric power in all the sectors of economy in the successive planning stages that have been carried out. In the pre-independence scene, that is before 1947, the first instance of commercial utility started in India in Kolkata. The government of West Bengal, actually at that time it was Bengal, not West Bengal, the government of Bengal granted an exclusive 21-year license to the Calcutta Electricity Supply Corporation to supply electric power to Calcutta. Thereafter, Mumbai, or it was known as Bombay at that time, was the second city to get electricity, and as time progressed, private companies set up power supply systems in major urban areas under franchises, which allowed them a reasonable rate of return. Electricity at that time was a luxury. The demand for electricity during this phase was driven by demand from new industries, commercial enterprises, and domestic consumption also. Most of the earlier private companies in the power sector cease to exist today as they have all been combined into state-owned enterprises, and very few like Tata's in Bombay, they still have the distribution and some generation. Now, the first Indian Electricity Act, it was in the year 1910. One of the earliest regulations in the power industry was introduced in the pre-independence era in the year 1910. This act provided the basic framework for supply of electricity in our country. The power sector was at a very, you can say, early stage during this time, and there was a huge investment requirement for laying down the basic infrastructure. Now, that Indian Electricity Act encouraged the growth of the industry by issuing licenses to private companies. Since government did not venture in this area solely, they tried to invite the private companies and licenses were issued. Now, there are certain things, the basic features I can just mention that structural framework was set up for electricity supply, means the basic distribution systems, transformers, and envisaged growth of the electricity through private licensees. The government saw that the growth and planning of the electric power will be done with these private participation. So licenses were allotted by the state governments also for supply of power in specified areas. Specified areas, not for everywhere. Legal framework was also set up for laying down the distribution lines, transmission lines, and other works, that how this right of way has to be operated, what should be the height of the conductors, the poles, what should be the proper span length. All these things were clearly formulated. The government also ensured a fair kind of relationship between the private companies and consumers, because unless some kind of restrictions or modes are formulated, this is going to be a very gray area. So the rights of consumers should also be protected, and this was realized quite 1 century ago, that consumers, they must be protected from the monopolistic nature of electricity, because this power was confined to, in a monopoly economy, means only certain private companies were responsible and you have got no other choice. Thus, during this phase, electricity generation was mainly in the private sector and power generation was largely based on coal and hydropower. Only coal and hydropower. So Tata Power, formerly known as Tata Electric, was the country's first largest private sector utility, Tata Electrics. This company commissioned its first hydroelectric station with a capacity of 72 megawatt somewhere in Maharashtra. The power industry suffered from huge costs and wide variation in power voltages during that period. So, as the technical expertise in the domestic industry was not very well developed, most of the projects were based on limited imported technology. And this definitely involved huge cost. At the same time, there was a wide variation in voltages that was supplied to the consumers, and both systems, that is AC and DC, were used at that time. Now, after 47, at the time of independence, electricity generation and supply was concentrated in the hands of private suppliers, and this was largely in urban areas. Most areas across the country, these companies were not even allowed to operate. So, in order to promote overall growth and development, some changes in the Electricity Act were required. And Therefore, the Indian Electricity Act 1948 was promulgated, and that was basically based on the UK Electricity Supply Act 1926. It was primarily based on the UK Electricity Supply Act 1926, and many features were borrowed from that. So under this Indian Electricity Supply Act 1948, a very important development occurred, that was establishment of Central Electricity Authority, which even today exists. I think all of you know about it. You must have heard about CEA, Central Electricity Authority. So it was established at the central level, and the state electricity boards, these are non-existent today, but at that time, these state electricity boards were established at the state level. The objective of Central Electricity Authority was to develop a sound, adequate, and uniform national power policy. National power policy to coordinate development of the power sector in India. At the national level, and the emphasis was laid much on the rural areas apart from the urban areas. So these SEBs creation was mandatory for arranging supply of electricity within states. Electrification, which was earlier limited to cities, was planned to be extended to all parts of the cities and adjoining areas through these state electricity boards. Through these electricity boards. Now these SEBs became integrated utilities with overall presence in generation, transmission, and distribution in their respective states. During this period, the development and planning was done by the SEBs at the state level, while the Central Electricity Authority was primarily responsible for planning at national level, and it provided the electricity boards with broad guidelines in planning and development of electric power. These SEBs took over the private companies in their respective states, and the newly created state electricity boards were interconnected to improve the reliability of power system and to ensure wider geographical area also. The electric sector moved into the public sector domain from the private hands, and over the years, the public sector gained prominence in the power industry. So this was a situation in 60s or in late 50s, even in early 70s also. But now you see the wheel has come the full circle. The total installed capacity nowadays by private sector is more than the government sector. Simply, and what have been the reasons, we will go through in detail. So in the initial period, these boards' performance was satisfactory, no doubt. They worked well in the initial stages only. They played a vital role in the development of the power sector. According to the Electricity Supply Act 1948, these SEBs were required to generate a minimum return of 3% on their net fixed assets. in the services they provided after meeting the financial charges and depreciation. What does it mean? That they were allowed to operate on a pre-specified level of profit margin. It was not that they were very given free hand to charge from the consumers. No, it was not possible because they were all operating in public sector environment, and they had very strict control over their operation. Performance of these electricity boards were very closely monitored by the government, state governments, Central Electricity Authority, and at every stage. And this was one of the reasons for their failure, in the later stages, as you will see, you will realize very soon. So these SEBs were able to generate the minimum returns for many years, but later on their performance faltered and they had to seek financial aid from the state in the forms of grants, subsidies, loans, and all. Because their financial health slowly and slowly started deteriorating. Their financial health was not in a good shape. The early 70s were marked by incidents of power blackout and grid collapses. Early 70s. Hydropower generation suffered, especially as the availability of water resources was heavily dependent on the monsoon season. There were delays in civil works, delays in the power supply, plant equipment, and the infrastructure additions in terms of transmission and distribution was also not in good condition. Now, you should also know that the central government amended the Electricity Supply Act 1948 and established National Hydroelectric Power Corporation also in 1975 to build a separate hydropower plant structure. And one more important establishment was carried out, that is National Thermal Power Corporation, which we all call as NTPC. They were all established in the year 1975 to set up coal-based power plants to supplement the generation capacities of the SEBs and private companies. So when the internal working and condition of these state electricity boards was not proving to be good, they were having financial positions in red. So central government thought that let us establish a new organization which can take part only in the generation, because all the problems basically occurred in transmission and distribution, not even in transmission also, but the distribution was the area where these SEBs were performing very badly. NTPC built its own transmission network to transmit electric power to different SEBs, and they sold these utilities their power. They charged for these power, and the working conditions in the NTPC were a role model for all power sector companies. NTPC became the role model for all power companies. Now the power shortfall has been unevenly distributed in the Indian state. As I told you that in some states where the industrialization was having done at a very rapid pace, they realized the poor conditions of these SEBs to the highest level, like Maharashtra. some southern states also, even in northern zone also, like Punjab and elsewhere, because the growth in generation did not prove to be good. And since agriculture sector was accorded the top priority, the power supply to the industrial sector suffered at the cost of agriculture. The percentage of shortfall in the year 89-90 was highest in the east. East means Odisha, Bengal, and other neighboring states, some parts of Bihar. The shortfall was almost 22%. In south, the gap was almost 19%. In the northeast region, it was almost meeting the same thing. I mean, there was no much shortfall in the demand and supply. In the north, the gap was almost 14%, and the total all India shortfall was 17%. Over the past few years, say in the late 70s and 80s, some of the largest states suffered power deficits around 20 to 38% of their estimated requirements. And states with a heavy reliance upon hydroelectric power, they suffered very badly in the drought conditions. Load shedding, which became the expected pattern of electric supply in our country, was primarily imposed upon the nation's industrial sector and urban population. Now see, whenever there was power shortage, and since in our 5-year plans, there was more and more stress on rural development to alleviate the rural poverty, the rural sector was given prominence over the industrial sector, and power was diverted to these rural areas, to Indian farmers, rather than to supply to industries. So this created a very pitiable situation, a very bad situation on the growth of our economy. I am telling you about in the 80s, from 80 to 90s, what was the situation. So rural areas where electricity is used for power irrigation pumps have been spared from severe load shedding, as agriculture was given high priority, and rural electrification systems and charges were subsidized at the same time. The farmer or the agriculture sector has to pay less charges or less revenues for consuming the same amount of electricity as the industrial or commercial sector in our country at that time. Urban residents have been inconvenienced by the lack of a regular and dependable supply of electricity, and the impact upon the industrial sector has been simply devastating. I will give you certain data regarding what happened in such cases. The Indian Institute of Socio-Economic Research has estimated in 1984 that every megawatt of power shortage resulted in a production loss of around 60 million. 60 million Indian currency means 6 crores, isn't it? So for every megawatt of electric power, 6 crore were lost in the production as a production loss. In the late 80s, say in the year 87, 88 to 89, The estimations were indicating that a 1% shortfall, in the generation led to around 10 billion Indian currency production loss in industry. And what was the total annual industrial production? It was around 400 billion. So 400 annual industrial production was there for the country in the late 1980s, and 1% shortfall in generation led to 10 billion. 1 billion stands for 100 crore, I think. So 1,000 crore was lost in the production loss simply because the Indian industry could not be supplied the required amount of electric power. Now this, you can imagine, has been one of the most important factors that finally resulted in India's slow rate of economic development. As the lack of electric power, you all know, is a strong deterrent to foreign and domestic industry. Who is going to establish industry in our country? Forget about the multinationals. Even the major industrial corporations, they somehow avoided the establishment of good industries in our country. This was the situation in the late 80s and early 90s. And as I told you that this was the period when the liberalization finally took over, and some situation was created that India forcibly was resorted to, and finally it moved towards the globalization process, which was all going through in the global economy. And the liberalization of power sector was one of the most important initiative. At that time, you know who was the finance minister of our country who initiated this? I think many of you, yeah, Manmohan Singh ji was the finance minister. And in the budget of May 91, the changes in the industrial policy resolution was carried out in his budget speech. So we can, yesterday I had shown this. The situation in the Indian power industry or overall Indian industry. India was really in a pretty bad shape. So in the colonial period, in the independence era, we can say that situations were controlled by the British people, and they did not invested their time and energy so that India gets into better shape economically. But what finally happened after independence is something that really created a very bad situation for the Indian power industry. Power was supplied in the earlier stages by private owned companies. With independence, the capacity doubled. The power installation capacity almost doubled every 5 years up to the year 1966. Then over 10,000 megawatt had been installed as a result of large-scale multi-purpose river valley development schemes that increased power capacity quickly. After 1966, however, the rate of growth slowed with an addition of about 1,000 megawatt per year, rising to around 3,000 megawatt per year in the last years of the sixth five-year plan. That is up to 80s. So from the seventh plan, it added almost 22,000 megawatt power. From the beginning, the electric power program was designed to install in India a modern system with many large power stations supplying electricity to cities and villages and industry. This was their policy directive. The policy of rapid industrialization required a vast increase in the supply of electricity as part of the necessary infrastructure. It is going to be one of the most important infrastructure. Now, the image that was held by India's planners and politicians of an extensive network of transmission lines supplying electric power throughout the country was somehow achieved. But since the supply was limited, it was erratic, it was unreliable, undependable, they could not do much to improve the situation. At the same time, little thought was given until very recently, or you can say in the late 80s or 90s, early 90s, to the actual energy needs of the vast bulk of Indians, the 70% almost of the total population who live in the villages. So, in the early plan periods, they did not realize that finally these village, these Indian or rural sector will have a large bearing on the overall economic situation. The power lines extended to the villages now have increased rural power supply, but still the inequalities as only the wealthy use this source of energy have shown us a different kind of situation. Studies have shown that very small percentage of families in village supplied by the rural electrification programs can actually afford these luxuries. I mean, these were all very problematic areas where proper attention was not paid and the situation deteriorated year by year. Now we should have a certain discussion regarding the state electricity boards, why their conditions deteriorated that finally their existence was disturbed. I mean, all these state electricity boards have been de-established and new power companies have started. We can take certain examples. Their problem, as I told you, started in the production and distribution area. Even production was also okay to certain extent, but the distribution created their fall. The two most important flaws in the production and distribution of power in India are the low plant load factors and the large amount of electricity which are lost in transmission and distribution. The plant load factor, as you know, is the ratio between actual electricity produced and the total installed capacity. Now, this PLF was lowest, as I have also told you in earlier discussion, it was lowest in Asia. Somehow it improved in 80s during the Rajiv Gandhi government. It was improved to around 53% for all thermal power plants and rose to 54% in the year 1991 with all kinds of incentives and technical assistance from different organizations. Now, the continued shortage from SEBs, their power managers or the high officials of these SEBs They were under pressure to run their plants and avoid shutdown, even for routine maintenance, simply because they had to operate. But this neglect led to major breakdowns and extended outages. The transmission and distribution losses for most systems around the world, usually, as I told you yesterday, also was around 5 to 6%, or at the most 8%. But in India, it was beyond 20%. Somewhere it was 22%, 25%. Now, all this led to a very, very critical situation. Some SEB systems have particularly massive losses. For example, Jammu and Kashmir endured a 49.8% transmission distribution loss in the year 1980-81. Can you imagine? Almost half of the power was lost unaccountably. No revenue was realized. Some of the loss is caused by faulty transmission lines, overextended rural services, and equipments, poor equipments, which are in dire repair need. But the major loss is definitely due to electricity theft. Now, the consumers, we all know, we have seen it. They bribe SEB officials not to meter their electricity or to arrange false meter readings. Illegal wires attached to power lines are used to tap free electricity. The impact of these losses on SEB finance is immense because payment is not made on a large amount of power that is produced and used. There have been reports, there have been studies. One was from Jagannathan and Thakurta, and they reported that even if one considers 14-15% losses acceptable in an underdeveloped country like India, but it still leaves 7% unaccounted. So it is definitely stolen. This adds up to nearly 20,000 million units lost to a staggering rupees 1400 crore, 14 billion rupees annually for state electricity boards and other generating agencies. Now you see, this simply could not procure revenue which they were supposed to get simply because they generated and they sold electricity to consumers. So annually they were incurring 1400 crore losses. So how long can this sustain? The efficiency of India's thermal plants was lowest in Asia, from 25% in 1973 to almost 24% in 1985. Asian country that was near India's rate was Bangladesh, which recorded 25.7% efficiency in 1985. India's electric power capacity was nearly 60,000, but its actual generating capacity was half of this. Taking into account the overall 20% T&D losses, one can see that not much power was sold to the consumers. A World Bank survey pointed to the obvious inability of the coal industry to provide adequate supply of coal to power plants. This was a major reason for thermal powers to operate at such low PLF. For example, at the 480 megawatt Santaldeep power plant in West Bengal, 4 units run simultaneously. The requirement of coal was around 4,800 tons a day, but availability of coal had hardly ever been more than 2,400 tons. 50% was supplied, and simply because no private participation was ensured in the coal mining. Now, coupled with this were the problems of quality of Indian coal also. Oversized coal was being sent, which required manually breaking down coal to size, a time consuming operation, holding up each wagon waiting to be unloaded by hours, a high ash content and rocks and dirt in the coal, along with the problem of uniform size, led to equipment and plant breakdown, and more maintenance was required. So less electricity produced than was needed, which means that the productivity in the coal mine and railways also suffered during these power breakdown and shortages. These electricity boards were only one kind of many organizations formed by state governments to carry out the various functions. While planners in New Delhi can design energy development plans for particular states, the state governments and the electricity boards should have implemented them, except in the case of atomic and NTPC or NHPC. As public enterprises, these electricity boards were subject to the same type of political, social, and economic pressures as other government bodies. Now, these are the key areas where they faltered chiefly. The chief engineer of Haryana State Electricity Board contend at that time that these SEBs function in a grossly unprofessional manner and are plagued by rank indiscipline, overstaffing, corruption, and bad maintenance. The governing body is a depository for political patronage to reward loyal party supporters. The managerial and other staff are subjected to political pressures on the award of tenders, electricity allocation, and jobs. At the same time, these electricity boards were vastly overstaffed to cater to the growing workforce. The same chief engineer summarizes the general situation in India. He says that the chairman and members were appointed for short periods or removed on different grounds at the whims of political leaders. In Punjab, there had been 7 chairmen since the end of 1971, and at that time, the present chairman and 2 technical members were given a term of 1 year only. The position in many states like Maharashtra, Kerala, West Bengal, UP, Haryana were almost similar, with 3 or 4 chairmen being changed in as many as years. These SEBs were also subject to policy directives from the central government. For example, the advancement of rural electrification has been a policy priority of the central government since the late 60s. Now, this policy required the extension of power lines into rural areas where only few people can afford the luxury of electricity, and the SEBs had been required to guarantee a continual flow of electricity to rural areas, definitely by denying supplies to urban and industrial users during the times of load shedding. As I told you earlier also, the pricing of rural agricultural electricity was highly subsidized. Now, this is going to harm the power industry in 2 ways. I mean, you are channeling your supply to the area where it is not being utilized. You have to maintain long duration power supply on these lines, and the cost of the power is subsidized, highly subsidized. So on every account, you are going to occur losses. The basic economic principles were not followed, which caused the SEBs to be unprofitable and mostly operate at loss every year. That chief engineer recalls that rural electrification was the main contributor to the ill health of these SEBs and for their major revenue losses, because at that time, even in the rural areas, people never used to pay for the revenues. It was continually maintained in the name of rural development. These SEBs did not generate income of either expansion or improvement of the power system, and they found it difficult to pay their creditors, whom they were allowed to obtain some loans and all. They simply failed to pay their dues. By 90s, the state electricity boards owed almost 8 billion to NTCP and almost 2 billion to the NHPC, among others. Thus, another vicious circle was created. Poor electricity board management created low PLF, high transmission distribution losses, which resulted in low output of mandatory allocation of subsidized power caused large financial losses each year, and without profits, these SEBs could not invest in equipment or expand capacity unless funds from the state or central governments were allocated. They cannot pay to their staff, equipment, coal, transport, and all other requirements to run the organization. So these electricity boards were having compounded problems as political interference also expanded into their management. So these were, in a nutshell, the situation that were responsible for the, you can say, doing away with such kind of unviable corporations. And finally came the 91 Industrial Policy Resolution and Power Sector Reforms, which led to a better growth of Indian power industry and its development. So I think we had a good discussion on the state of condition that was having in state electricity boards. They were finally too much mishandled or governed that they could become unsustainable at a later stage, and finally the government had to dissolve them and different companies were established again, like discoms, gencoms and all. So I think you must have got certain idea regarding the major factors